Okay, Theology Thursday live, and today we are covering the Fifth Commandment. For a quick review, as people come on, 1, you shall have no other gods before me. Just one God. 2, don't make idols. You shall not make a image of anything in heavens or the earth to bow down to serve that. So God cares about how we worship Him. 3 looks like a W, and so it's a word. It reminds me that it's a word command. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. 4. Remember, you have a thumb. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. And then we are on the Fifth Commandment today. The Fifth Commandment is honor your mother and your father that you may live long in the land the Lord thy God is giving you. Else, you might get a spanking. And then we'll hit number 6 next time. So, honor your mother and your father. First, let me just say, let's talk about what the word honor means, just to get that straight first. And the word honor is actually the word, it's from the root word for glory, kavod, which means heaviness or weightiness. So the idea behind glory in the Bible, glorification, is to give the ultimate importance, the weightiness, the gravitas to someone or something that is due. So ultimate glory and honor is given unto God. And it's interpreted in English in different ways because it does have different nuances in the Hebrew and in the Greek here. But the Hebrew word is kavod, and it means to honor. Is a very good word for it, to give this respect to. So we're going to look at the larger catechism a little bit. It's a little lengthy. I'll save that for the end, but it has some interesting stuff in it. So the first thing that comes up really is, would say, all right, what if your parents are evil? What if your parents are bad? Then am I supposed to honor them? Well, first of all, let's just say if you have bad parents who levels of how bad parents can be, and the worse your parents were, the worse for you. It's awful to have parents who neglected you or abused you or spoke curses into your life or just did whatever. So it's not a good thing to have bad parents. It's something that it can be tragic for a lot of people. It's very difficult to overcome those sorts of things, but you can overcome these things, and it can be quite heroic to overcome these things. You must overcome these things. It is not something that it's a hindrance to you. The Bible, it is a hindrance, but it's not the type of thing that can stop you from being successful. There's a video going around. It makes a point. It talks about privilege, I think, is the idea, and it has. And I haven't seen it in a while. It has a bunch of people that are lined up for a race, and some of them have weights tied to them, and some start way ahead, and then they all start running, and some just get to go and they go easier, and some have weights, and it's like, well, this explains privilege. It's like, well, in a certain sense, it does, yeah, but. I think we all know that if things come too easily to you sometimes, that you don't learn from it. Hey, Eric. And so if things come to you too easily, then, I don't know, you can't expect everything to be handed to you. So there's that. And then there's also the idea that when we think about privilege today, that everybody has burdens. Everybody has something that's a disadvantage to them. And, what a blessing we all live in this time. And we all get to live during this time. And we live in the United States. What a blessing that is. But with that comes an obligation to help people. And so, that's the way we do this. It's like those who have much, then to much will be demanded. And what we even see the story in the Bible of the talents, when God gives a lot of talents to one guy and not as many to another, and just one to another person. All right, man, listen later. Then the guy that I think it's 10 talents, he gets those, and he like goes out and he doubles it, and he gives, the master comes back and he's like, here, I have 20. And then the guy that had 5, he doubled it and he gives him back. And the guy that had 1, he says, I buried it because I know that you're a hard taskmaster and you reap where you don't sow. And it's like he had this terrible concept of who God was, and so, or who the master in this particular parable is, who is representative of God, and so he said, I just buried it. So when you came back, I'd have it for you here. And he says, you get at least to put it in the bank where it could have earned interest. And so he says, you wicked servant, you'll be cast out where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. And so, to him who has been given much, much will be required. And to him who has been given little, if I'm quoting this right, even what he has will be taken away from him if he doesn't honor God with it. So honor God with it. Some of the heroic stories we hear, the things that amaze us about people, are the people who, in spite of tremendous obstacles, rise to the occasion and do great things with their life. People who have a bunch of opportunities and things that's handed to them, they should be celebrated too. They took advantage of things that were given to them, and hopefully they use that for the good and betterment of other people. So I don't think it's helpful for people in general, Christians in particular, to feel ashamed of our gifts, but we should definitely have a great responsibility to those around us to use them properly. But also, when you look at the things that are oppressive to you, the things that are trials, struggles, difficulties, and you gotta go. You gotta keep. We can't let that just defeat you. And it's hard, and life is hard. But there is a God, and there is hope, and there's other people, and surround yourself with people who, or at least have a friend that you can trust, confide in, talk to, who wants what's best for you and is willing to speak truth into your life. And to bring us back to the commandment, because the issue was, what if you had bad parents? So let me just add this to it. So one, if you have bad parents, then, God bless you, but use it as a lesson. Don't be a bad parent. When you have opportunity to be a parent yourself, don't be a bad parent. And when you're picking a possible person as a spouse, find somebody that you believe will be a good parent with you. So it's very important that we try to raise our children to the best of our abilities, so they can become productive in society, and that they can be people that we're proud of, and that can function well in our culture. All right, so what if you have bad parents? So, and also you got to look at it and think, what if I am a bad parent? What if don't be a bad parent? It's easy to say don't do this and don't do that, but what you have to be aware of is, what is your role as a parent? Like, what is your job? And your job as a parent is to help your children to succeed, and to the best of their ability, and to be able to be caring for other people. That it's not all about them all the time, that they can be respectful to other people, and that they are able to succeed to the best of their abilities. That's what you want. You want them to be able to see their potential, and even strive to go beyond what they see their potential to be. That's what we desire for our children. We're imperfect. All parents are. You're going to fail. That's where we believe in God. We believe in Christ. We believe that He makes up for our insufficiencies and inadequacies. But we don't depend on Him to do that. We don't say, I just won't do anything because God will fix it. Well, that's abdicating your responsibility, your God-given responsibility as a parent. So if you have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, pray for them. That's your first important responsibility. Pray with them. That's an amazing thing to do. Read the Bible with them, but let them know you love them, and let them know you care for them, and let your children, grandchildren, great-children know that you're on their side and you want what's best for them. But if your desire for your children is that, hey, Amy, I don't know how to do the work thing here. If your desire for your children is is like you're raising playthings for yourself, or you're raising some pets, or you want your children to provide love to you. I'm having children. Some people have children. It's like, this is what will make my marriage work. So It's a whole other thing about working on your marriage, but your marriage cannot be built around your children, and you cannot be focused around your children. You must be focused on one another, and then together you say, we're going to parent these children that God has given us to the best of our abilities, and we're going to demonstrate what it's like for two people who are both sinful, who have married each other maybe years ago, and now you're completely different people, but you still are together, and you still show how you can love and respect. Maybe even have fights, and you forgive one another, and maybe you do bad things to your kids, you yell at them improperly or something, and you apologize to them, you explain to them about grace and forgiveness and mercy and these things, and they grow up to see these examples, and that's what we want. We want our children to be able to be independent, critical thinkers who know how to play games with other people, play sports in a way to the best of their ability, but never in a way that brings shame on the other person, never in a way that makes other people not want to participate with them, never in a way where everybody's like, okay, maybe you've risen to the top of your sport or your field or whatever it is you're doing, but nobody likes you. Nobody wants to do this stuff with you. You help your children to understand how to be empathetic and how to care about other people and still excel. I think it's one of the problems in our culture today is that we have this idea that if you try to be the best at something or you try to win, it's always at the expense of somebody else. It's always, you're just hurting other people. So we don't keep score or just let the other people win or something like that. And then maybe there's times for that and stuff, but there's nothing wrong. When we did Taekwondo, two people in a ring, and they're in combat with each other with rules and things like that for safety, and so that there's understanding of the way things work. And if the one person feels sorry for the other person, maybe there's some reason, but if it's two people who are going in considering themselves to be co-equal, and which of us are going to succeed, then it's the one that, if they both do the best, then they're both going to learn. If they don't, then how do you know how well you're doing? And it's one of the things, I don't play golf but like once every decade, but one of the things that's great about golf is you swing, you hit the ball, and you have immediate feedback as to whether you did that right or not. Somebody might say, that was a terrible swing, but you made a hole-in-one. It's like, then I'm swinging the way I'm swinging. But if I'm swinging and the ball, I never even hit the ball, but I am going to say that's the way you do it. It's like, no, there's this immediate feedback. And the world is going to give people that. So you have to teach your children, back to this idea of honor your mother and your father, of respect. And what's the opposite of honor? A good way to define a word is to say what the opposite is. And of course, dishonor is the easiest word to look at. You don't want to dishonor, bring shame upon your parents. But also another word for that is disrespect. To respect your parents, to disrespect them is to bring shame upon them, is not to honor them, is not good. I heard an explanation one time that to honor your parents is I can't remember the author, but he said you're under the umbrella of protection. As long as you're obeying and listening to and honoring your parents, you're under this umbrella of protection. And when you step out from underneath that respect, which depending on what's going on with your parents or something, you do so at your peril. Be careful before you do things like that. And our hearts are deceptive and wicked, and we are easily convince ourselves that, I need to disobey my parents now because, they don't know what they're talking about, and then all of a sudden there you are. So they don't know, watch your heart, watch your attitude towards your parents. And then of course there's the leaving and cleaving aspect where you do, when you're married, there can be problems with people who never actually do the leaving their parents and cleaving to their spouse, but that's a thing for another video. But if your children do not learn respect, if your goal is to get your children to love you, then when your children behave in a dangerous or disrespectful manner, then it's going to be difficult for you to discipline them if you are concerned about their response to you. If you're too concerned about how your child is going to like you, or might hurt their feelings or something like that, or damage their psyche in the future if you dare to discipline your children, then somebody's going to discipline them. I mean, they're eventually going to go up against authority at some point in this world, and it's going to hit them hard. And it can be the police, it can be nature, it can be teachers. They go into the military. Oh my goodness! If they go into the any profession where they have people over them, they have to learn how to disagree in an agreeable fashion, how to have good discussions about things, how to express themselves in a way that's not disrespectful, and that's what you need to be teaching your children, is how to do that, not to allow your children to be just disrespectful children, and that's going to take discipline. When I taught, talking about Taekwondo again here, when I taught Taekwondo, and I don't know, I was thinking today how many, hundreds of kids over the course of a couple of decades. It's just, and I had an application that somebody would fill out before they would take the class, and one question I had on the application was, what do you specifically want your child to learn from taking this class? What specifically do you want them to learn? And because teaching people to kick and punch and defend themselves, well, who knows what they wanted their children to learn. So I would say over the hundreds of these applications that I've had, I had the same answer all but once. And I can't remember what the other one was. It was either something silly or something they just took another turn on or something. But still, statistically, it's a very high number of people who put the exact same thing, which once I was a parent and I thought, how would I fill this question out? I'd have answered it the same way too. But what they all put was, what specifically you want your child to learn by taking this class? It was, in one way or another, and almost they would use the word self-control. They wanted their children to learn self-control. Okay, fine. And what you learn after a while is, it's like, well, there's a reason you want them to learn self-control, is because you haven't taught them any self-control. Because in order to learn self-control, first, that means that you don't have self-control. The child is disrespectful. The child does what he wants to do. He's untamable. I want my child to learn to listen. I want my child to learn to be able to control his emotions and not always act out in these negative ways. And so when the kid would come into class, it's a disciplined class, and you try to do it, in area, you have classes, if you have enough students, divided into novice and different skill experience categories. And so you're not just like expecting a new child to come in acting like, he's been doing this for years and years. But, come stand like this. I'm not going to. Yes, you are. I'm not. Okay, go sit down. I'm not going to sit down. I can physically control you without harming you in any way. I can pick you up, set you down, and then they cry, and then they tell their mommy and their daddy, and then you get the different responses from parents where they're angry at you in some way because what did you do? Why did you do that? And it's like, because you wanted your child to learn self-control, and the only way for us to learn self-control, if we don't have it, is for somebody's going to control us, and then we gradually develop, how do I control myself? And here's how you do it. You simply have a goal that you want to reach, and you say, what could I just do today to have just a little more, self-control? What's something in your life that's just, we're talking about parenting. Let me stay on track. So if your children, they won't go to bed at the right time or something, well, you can control that. The younger they are, the more you can control it. And they have to understand that once they begin to obey, then gradually they can do things without being coerced into it, hopefully. And so, one of the things we read, my wife and I, was that, if the room is dirty and you tell your children, hey, you need to go to your room, you've got socks, you got to pick up the socks, you got to put the socks in the drawer, you need to go in there and clean the room. You're treating them like they're stupid first of all. They know. And so the idea was one-word statements or commands. Room, clothes, bath, bed. And it sounds all bed. Love your children. Okay? I mean, literally love them. And then don't worry about whether they understand that or not. You love your children will be loved. So that's good. But it's important that they learn proper ways to be respectful and honorific in society. I think we've all seen examples of young people today who act out against authority in terrible ways. And if you want to say, how did this happen? Pick up a mirror, look in the mirror, and ask yourself, what have I done? How have I treated people in authority? How have I spoken about people in authority in negative, disrespectful ways in front of my children? And then you apologize to your children and you say, I'm sorry I gave you that example. I shouldn't be like this. And I think I just lost... Am I back on? I had it going there too. It's fun to talk about discipline. So anyway, let me just skip to this. It's before somebody thinks, well, this is Old Testament. Can somebody give me a like or something so I know that I'm actually still broadcasting? But I'm just going to keep going anyway. In case somebody thinks, well, this is Old Testament stuff, Ten Commandments. We're talking New Testament now, and that doesn't apply to me. Well, Paul disagrees. In Ephesians 6, he takes up the Ten Commandments, and he says, let me look this up here, Ephesians 6:1. And we read Paul writing. In a second. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Obey them in the Lord, so you do it out of godly respect. Ultimate authority is God, and that's why we obey God. Our parents is because we obey God. This is the first commandment with a promise, Paul adds, which is neat, that it may go well with you, and that you may live long in the land. Then it adds this. Thank you, Kathy. Then it goes this. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. I think the King James says wrath. I like the word wrath. Don't provoke your children to wrath. And bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So there's your balance. You bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord, but don't provoke them to wrath. I mean, they're children. They're going to be grumpy. They're going to be out of sorts. They don't have a developed sense of self-control like as if we do. So, and be careful about not allowing yourself to feel shame and embarrassment too much by the way your children act in public. You should control your children in public, but they're still children. Don't let too much of your self-esteem be tied up into the way your children appear in front of the world. So you have to be careful with that. And yeah, I know I tend to go in and out for a while. I was hoping it was me. The Wi-Fi went out. I had to type my password back in. So anyway, the last thing is the 1 Peter 2:17, which uses the same word honor, and it says honor everyone, love the brotherhood. So honor everybody. That's okay. So in Taekwondo, so keep talking about it today. There's an oath we took. I shall observe the tenets of Taekwondo, and the tenets were courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit. So I shall observe tenets of Taekwondo. I shall never misuse Taekwondo. I'll be a champion of freedom and justice. I shall respect parents, teachers, all senior ranks. So basically I will respect those in authority over me. and that's important. And what the Bible says here is honor everyone. So we are to behave in honorable ways, and that's what the Bible requires of the Christian. When you are talking politics, when you are debating who's your favorite character on the soap opera, when you are, whatever it is you're doing, in every context where you are, make sure that everybody that you're dealing with, you're behaving and you're being honorable. And that's something that'd be a great discussion to talk about. And then it talks about the brotherhood, which is the believers. So he's not just saying honor all the Christians. He said your neighbor, love your neighbor yourself, love your enemy, this sort of thing. But you think about honoring people. Teach your children to do that. And that's to honor. What does it mean to behave? And don't get me started. I live in the South. I was raised, and one of the things that is just habitual is yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. Or as my mom said, gnome, which is not those little characters. That means no, ma'am, apparently. And but it's yes, sir, no, sir. And then older people and just never referred to older people by their first name unless you put Mr. or Miss in front of it. And Miss Daisy, Miss Mildred, Mr. Pete, things like that. That's the way we just did it, and I think it's good. And then I see a lot of parents would come to the Taekwondo class, and I guess the reason I keep talking about that is because it was specifically dealt with honor and respect and discipline and things. But it was parents not really wanting their children to have to say yes or no, sir. They thought their children should not have to humble themselves, debase themselves in that way or something. It's like, it is so healthy to treat other people with respect. It is so, look at, police officers arrest somebody. I mean, they've been chasing them. The suspect's done something awful. I mean, it's at least been reported that maybe they've been shooting at them, and the guy's throwing his gun, and they're running, and the guy's cussing them, and the cops get to him, and they just run off and everything, and everybody goes, why are they treating him like that? And it's like there's this innate sense of, even in that situation, those who have that much authority need to have an equal amount of self-control when it comes to these sorts of things. And so that when you see police officers they're captured on video that are able to maintain composure in the sense in the sight of things like that, in the face of great antagonism and things like that. I mean, it's almost, it's superhuman. I mean, it is. It takes some kind of great level of training, but it's the type of thing that we're called to, is to be able to love and honor people in such a way that we don't we don't disrespect people just out of our anger and stuff. So anyway, next thing he says in 1 Peter 2:7, after honor everybody, he talks about the brotherhood. He says, love the brotherhood. Love the brotherhood. And people who are in your church, people who are believers, people who are trying to serve the Lord, people who are trying to just get along in life, people who are trying to figure out, what do they believe, and how do I deal with hard times, and how do I, all these things. People who, go to your church and all know better, and they talk bad about you, or they gossip about you, or they come up and say something hurtful to you, or they come up and, they absolutely do something horrible. How do you love people like that? So that's, something you have to be able to say there's something greater than us all, and in Christ I'm going to love the brotherhood. And then it says fear God. So, your ultimate, that's how you do it, because ultimately there's God, and he's the one we should have the most respect for. So it's honor everyone, love brotherhood, fear God. Here comes the hard part. This is the one that's going to get everybody right here, especially these days, is honor the king. That's what it says in the Bible right there. First, I wrote it down, but it's in the Bible. It's backwards on there, but it's 1 Peter, look it up, 1 Peter 2:17, honor the king. We don't have a king. Oh, isn't that great? But I think we know what it means. Whatever you call your king, czar, president. I heard Harry Reeder, I think, has argued that in our country, the ultimate authority, the king, is the Constitution. That's who our elected Representatives take a vow to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. It should have that high honor. But the President of the United States and all those in authority over us, including whoever, including Donald Trump and Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama and George Bush, all these people honor. Well, I disagree with them greatly. Well, good. Disagree vehemently, disagree articulately, disagree inarticulately, but disagree in an honorable way. What if we have an evil leader? You tread at your peril. Tread at your peril. You're quick to think because I disagree vehemently with a person and I'm listening to what everybody said. The news is just a form of gossip, so be careful what you hear on the news. But you form your own opinions as to what you think about a person. But the Bible doesn't say honor the king if they're honorable, but there's responsibility for those in authority to protect the good, promote the good, and to subdue evil. That's their responsibility under God. And this last thing I'm going to read, it has to do with the same thing. And this is all under honor your parents because it has to do with superiors and things like that. But Hebrews chapter 13, verse 17. What we read there is, obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping, this is talking about leaders in the church specifically here, but you'll see how it applies, because they're keeping watch over your souls as those who will give an account. So there will be an account given, I think, even for secular authorities, because in Romans it says that the governmental authorities are ministers of God appointed by him for the good. So they're going to have an accountability too. And then it says, obey them and submit to them as those keeping watch over your souls, as those who will give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be of no advantage to you. Pray for us, for we are sure that we have a clear conscience, desiring to act honorably in all things. So desiring to act honorably. So if you disagree with those who are in authority, whether it's a parent, whether it's a president, or whoever, and you want to vocally disagree, don't show up at a restaurant and start yelling at people. Don't go outside their house and start yelling at people and banging on the doors and trying to intimidate and scare people. You're using Satan's methods to accomplish what you believe to be godly, good aims, and that's never good. There are ways to honorably voice your opinion, and that will have much more weight. But make sure that we are good parents and that we're good children and that we love the Lord with all our heart, soul, mind, strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. All right. You can like this. You can share this. I have a YouTube thing. I try to upload these to YouTube. I'll try to put a link to this on there too, so you can set up, if you know people who aren't on Facebook but they have internet and YouTube, then they can like it and press a little bell thing and you get a notification whenever something's posted. Okay, that's all I got to say about that. And God bless and find you a good church.